Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, stay with us as the sun gets set to shine.
Here's Perry. Cigar Hurd. Here's the jump shot.
Jumps to Marley. A long three. He got it! He got it! Into Booker. Here's the three. Suzanne! Oliver, Sir Charles. And he flies in for a wham, bam, slam. Whammo time! He got it! Suzanne! Oh, brother!
Welcome to 7 Seconds or Less Podcast. This is a podcast about both the NBA generally and the Phoenix Suns specifically. My name is Max McCauley. I am one of your hosts. Your other host, well, his name is David Nash, and he joins me right now. David, how you doing?
I'm good, Max. How are you?
I'm actually doing fantastically. You know why?
Why's that?
Because we're nerding out over one of my favorite subjects in the world today. It's fake NBA trades.
And
I love them.
It's been too long since we last spoke, so
It has.
I'm really looking forward to it.
You were gone for what, 2 weeks on a work trip?
I was gone for 2 weeks, and we can spoil the secret now. The first two pods were recorded, essentially together. So our first time ever recording.
The secret might have been spoiled when I told everybody that in the disclaimer.
We will jump into our second official recording and our third official pod, and I'm looking forward to it. I've watched a lot of tape. I've just spent 20 hours on an aeroplane and didn't watch the entertainment system once because I was watching a hell of a lot of prospect film on my computer. So I'm looking forward to this. Excellent.
Well, I'm excited about it too. So as I said leading in, we're gonna start this episode with fake trades, specifically draft day trades. And as we're wont to do on this podcast, we're gonna do both league-wide stuff and Sun-specific stuff. We'll have trades for both. Once we're finished with that, we're gonna move on to the guys who are actually in this draft. We're gonna be doing mostly options for number 31, but a lot of the guys at number 31 could also be taken at 16. That whole range is pretty messy. After we do that, we're probably going to move on to the 59 pick. I'm not going to spend much time on the 59 pick, Dave. I know you have a few names. I have one name, so I don't know if we're going to spend a ton of time on that.
I'm going to throw some really wild names out there and see if one of them sticks.
Excellent. That's really all you can hope for with 59.
Exactly.
And then we're going to finish up with the 7 seconds or less segment, as always. This episode, it's David's turn. He's going to throw 3 questions at me. I've not prepared for any of them, and I only have 7 seconds to answer them, so that should be fun. But before we get started with any of that stuff, we're going to start with David regaling us with a tale of Suns past in his recurring segment, Did You Know?
Thanks, Max. Recently had someone bring the old Grantland War Room video to me. I don't know if you ever saw that, Max, the famous or infamous Kings one from the
Stauskas.
Exactly. I thought it was gone from the internet world forever because I hadn't been able to find it for quite a while, but someone sent it to me and I delved back into that world, which is fascinating. For anyone who hasn't seen it, you should definitely try and check it out on YouTube.
For all of Vivek's faults, you can't say he's not enthusiastic.
He's very enthusiastic, and you'll see it in that video for sure. To briefly describe it, it's kind of this little 3-part series where the Kings essentially tried to crowdsource their pick in the draft. They involved some fans and their front office, and I won't give it all away, but they ended up taking Stauskas, as we said, and there's some pretty cringy Vivek moments in there. Anyway, you get the suggested YouTube videos after you've finished watching one, and kind of one led to another, and all of a sudden I'd watched a Boston War Room video, a Bucks War Room video, a Blazers one, which was quite good actually.
What was the Blazers one for?
The Blazers one was when they landed CJ and Crab. Kind of had to make some moves to do that, and we're hoping that CJ was going to slide to pick 10, I think it was. So, that one was pretty cool. So this is a bit of a 2-part Did You Know, Max? Did you know that the Suns almost had Steph Curry in 2009?
I did know that.
I think most Suns fans know that. It seems to come up on Twitter or in an article every now and then. So it was what we call the failed Curry trade, which ended up being pick 14 and Stoudemire for Curry. And depending on whose version of events you believe, the Warriors essentially backed out when it got to their pick because I think the Suns were very excited that Curry was on the board, but the Warriors were even more excited and perhaps didn't expect it.
Wise of them to be excited about that.
Yeah, and probably worth reneging on any deal that they might have had. But
oh yeah,
can you tell me, Max? It's a extra trick question here for you. Can you tell me who the Suns picked with number 14 in the end?
Oh, what year was it? Oh, I think I might know. Was it Earl Clark?
It was Earl Clark. You're 2 from 2. Not bad.
I remember watching him in Summer League that year. I actually went to Summer League that year, and he was unimpressive.
Surprise. Just as a aside, I'm very jealous that you went to Summer League.
I'm going again, too.
That's one more than me.
I can't wait.
So that was one that didn't go ahead, and a draft day trade that didn't go ahead, which, as I'm sure everyone can see where I'm going with this, we're going into some draft day trades after this, but I'm throwing in a little bit of a bonus there, and one trade that in recent times that did go ahead was Marquise Chris in 2016, of course. Can you remember the exact package that the Suns used?
So it was number 13, which Kings took Papagiannis with. Yep. It was it 27?
28, not bad.
28, okay. They took Skal with that.
Yep.
And then it was our good friend Bogdan Bogdanovic, right?
And a 2020 second, just to throw that in there.
Okay, well, I'm really nervous about what that's going to be.
Yeah, just to rub some salt into the wounds there. But did you know, Max, and everyone listening, that essentially means that the Suns traded Markieff Morris, which they got 13 for, Isaiah Thomas, which they got 28 for, Marcus Morris and Reggie Bullock, which they got the 2020 second for, and the draft rights to Bogdan Bogdanovic. So that is the package that got us Marquise Chris, and I, for one, hope Chris can have a better year this year and really bounce back, because that's a hell of a lot to give up to just trade up.
To say, I really hope he improves a little bit after looking at it that way.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what the Kings ended up with, you could kind of go maybe Bogdan's the only thing that the Suns will end up kind of missing from that, but
I would say so far Bogdan is by far the best part of that entire trade, right?
Yeah, but if you go back one step further and realize kind of all those current players that we gave up, it hurts a little.
It does, but the reason why it doesn't hurt as much is because, like I said, the only guy in that trade who I think has really shown out has been Bogdan, and Bogdan would be good on the Suns, I suppose, but he kind of plays the exact same position Devin Booker does, so.
Yeah, and I think that's why they were willing to throw him in the end.
Yeah, so do I. That makes sense.
All right, well, that's it, Max.
That was great. We'll transition right from that to other draft day trades, fake ones that we're going to be predicting.
I love a fake trade.
The first one actually involves one Marquise Chris to an extent.
Okay, I'm interested.
So I know you saw over the weekend, and most of the people who are listening to this probably saw over the weekend that I believe it was Jonathan Wasserman at Bleacher Report reported that the Suns are trying to figure out a way to either interview or have dinner with or work out Trae Young.
Yep.
Certain point guard from Oklahoma. And obviously, that got me excited. I'm a big Trae Young fan, so I started to think about how could we possibly get him to Phoenix.
Okay.
So I look at the teams drafting sort of in the mid lottery, and a lot of those teams I don't really see interested in trading back. The one that kind of stands out to me though is Cleveland, and the reason I say that is because Cleveland, they need future assets, right? I mean, I think so. I'm going to go ahead and assume for purposes of this that LeBron's leaving.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of a fair assumption.
Yeah.
Number 8's great, but it's kind of all they have. They're missing a lot of their first-round picks going forward. They don't have a lot of good young players. Is number 8 really what you're going to build your entire future around?
I've definitely thought about this, and it kind of comes up in one for me a bit later. And multiple assets rather than just the 8, depending on who's there on the board, is probably, a way that the Cavs could go.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you miss on that one pick, that's all you got. Then after that, you're building with nothing.
Yeah, and you're not getting LeBron at number 8, unfortunately.
I don't think you are, at least. So here's the idea that I have. Phoenix sends Marquise Chris, Alan Williams, Troy Daniels, Jared Dudley, Tyler Ulis, number 16, Milwaukee pick, and a top 3 protected 2019 pick. And that seems like an overpay, right? Just for number 8. It would be, right?
I think so.
But there's a reason why there's all that salary included. You're not just getting number 8. You're getting Kevin Love.
Okay. I don't mind it. There's a lot in there as far as draft picks go. You didn't really mention any players that I'm, too disappointed to lose, particularly if someone like Kevin Love's coming back. So, I could get around it, as I like to say.
I mean, the defense would be awful because you'd be running out a lineup of Trae Young, Devin Booker, Josh Jackson, Kevin Love, and DeAndre Ayton. But it'd be really fun to watch, right?
All you need to do is score more points, Max.
They would score a lot of points, I think, right?
They definitely would. I don't mind it. It's a big one. It would certainly put shockwaves through the draft. But it's not the craziest idea I've heard this year. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think the one reason people might be wondering why Cleveland would be willing to give up Kevin Love. I think if LeBron goes away, they're going to be trading him anyway.
Yeah, and there's been reports this week kind of, hinting at that already.
Yeah, he's not long for there if LeBron leaves.
I think those two have definitely played their last game together. Unless he somehow gets traded somewhere that, LeBron decides to join.
I was about to say you missed the second part of it. It said LeBron's going to sign with the Suns when this happens later.
Okay. All right, I retract my statement.
All right, cool. All right, your turn. What do you got?
All right, if you're going to go with a big one from the top, I should. I've got a Love one too. Unfortunately, it's not with him ending up in Phoenix, but it is a big one. So I'll go with that one first. So I'm looking at Utah at the moment, and I think they're going to let Favors walk. I think him and Gobert have, they've had their moments, but it's not a great pairing going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And after what they did this season and Donovan Mitchell on the rise, they might look to make a move that kind of solidifies their playoff spot again. So
I think it makes sense.
I'm trying to reunite Kevin Love and Ricky Rubio in Utah of all places. So you'll have to stick with me here. It's not quite as big as yours, but there are a few moving parts. So Utah ends up with Kevin Love, just straight up. That's all they get. Cleveland ends up with Kenneth Faried, Burks, number 14 and number 21 in this year's draft.
Okay.
And Denver, as you probably can imagine, with Faried's name linked, ends up with Cephalosha and Jonas Jerebko.
Okay. See, I think that makes a lot of sense for everyone. I'm thinking that Cleveland obviously gets a couple of picks in this draft, and they get rid of Love's contract. It's one thing that Cleveland's going to be trying to do is cutting money if LeBron leaves, right?
Correct.
And that's a good way for them to do that. Denver, I like it because Denver's getting rid of Faried, right? They're going to dump that.
They're getting rid of Faried. It's costing them 14, but most notably, Cephalosha and Jerebko are both non-guaranteed. And at pretty good numbers, too. Off the top of my head, I think Cephalosha's around 5 and Jerebko's around 4. So that's about...
They could also use Cephalosha, too, if he's in good shape, right?
Yeah, so for me, it's kind of like that's $9 million in salary that they could clear if, they've obviously got Jokic that they need to max out this summer and a few other pieces. But if they could make it work, both of those guys... are worth keeping around if you don't need to waive them. So I really like the flexibility. I didn't love the initial report of them giving up 14 just to clear Faried. But I kind of like both of those guys because it gives them the flexibility of going either way.
Yeah, I like that because like you said, they need wing talent, and I feel like they can keep like one of those guys, like figure out which one they want more and cut the other one.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, probably the only thing for me, and I've kind of got it noted here, I didn't mention it straight away, is, maybe Cleveland needs to get something else, because they are taking on, Fareed and Burks, both last year of their contract, but at some pretty big money and being rewarded with, 14 and 21 to kind of do so, which means they're not getting a hell of a lot extra for giving up,
right.
The best player, by far the best player in the deal. So, maybe there's a protected first in there from Utah, but then, it gets that maybe Utah's giving up a little bit much. But, that would be my only footnote to the deal.
And another note of that, and another reason why I think they would make the Kevin Love trade I mentioned earlier, is they need to be bad next year, right? I think they have their first round pick goes to Atlanta if it's not in the top 10 or something like that.
That's exactly correct.
Yeah, so they're going to want to be bad.
They sure are.
Cool. All right.
What's your next one?
This is a league-wide trade, not a Suns trade, but it's a pretty big one. It's a three-way.
Okay.
Okay, so it's New Orleans, Washington, and Philadelphia. New Orleans signs and trades DeMarcus Cousins to Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Washington sends Bradley Beal to Philadelphia. Philadelphia sends number 10 to Washington, Robert Covington, and then like basically salary filler, maybe like TLC or something like that to New Orleans. So New Orleans ends up with Robert Covington in the kind of trash. They get a nice wing guy. Washington ends up with Cousins, who is obviously, famous linkage to John Wall.
Yep.
And number 10.
Yeah.
Philadelphia gets Bradley Beal, who, could be the scoring sort of secondary ball handler that they really need. What do you think?
I like it. I'd have to double check on a few things with the sign and trade, but I'm sure you've done your research there.
I went to the Larry Kroon FAQ, and it didn't seem like there's anything illegal about this.
Okay.
But
I know that there's like a half salary provision when it comes to sign and trades. But yeah, that would kind of be my only thing worth looking at. But I'm sure they could work it out if it was something that they really wanted to do. The main pieces are obviously what the big concern is.
Right, exactly.
I do think that Covington is, a guy that Philly are going to look to move at some point, because I think his contract's very valuable. And, if they look for a wing or another big piece to add to that team, I think he's the guy kind of in line to go. I think that Boogie's time in New Orleans is pretty much up. There was the Zach Lowe report that they're probably going to re-sign him just to trade him. Mm-hmm. And Washington probably has to split Beal and Wall up at some point. So I think it makes a lot of sense for all the teams involved for sure.
I don't think I would do it if I were Washington, but I could see them doing it.
Yeah. I mean, they get 10 and Boogie,
They
right?
get 10, yeah. They get 10 and Boogie, so that helps.
That's pretty good value for a guy like Beal. I don't know if you're going to get
What would you do at 10 if you were them?
I was just thinking about that. I know we picked Zaire for Philly originally in our mock, and he's starting to slide on a few people's boards. I've probably even slid him back a couple of spots.
Oh, really? Interesting.
But they would certainly have a whole heap of options around 10. Just looking
I think
at my,
one of the
Bridges
could be really interesting there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm just looking at my big board now. I've got the Bridges at 9 and 10, and then probably a few pieces after that don't really make sense for Washington. So
the point guards you wouldn't be interested in.
Exactly. I mean, they're going to end up with, let's say, one of Porter, McCall, and Miles, and they're all pretty nice fits in Washington. Might ail a few problems that they have. So I like it.
You could run a pretty fun lineup out there with like Wall, Otto Porter, Mikal Bridges, and Kelly Oubre, and DeMarcus. Like that's kind of a fun modern lineup.
Very fun.
Cool. All right, what you got next?
All right, let's switch to Phoenix now.
Okay.
As you'll probably notice, I looked at kind of some similar guys. There's some common threads here. I think there will be a lot of action on draft night and leading up to to the next season. So we might get lucky and get one of these right. But I'm going back to Denver and back to Farid and that report of them willing to give up 14 to get off his contract. And I'm going to make that trade with the Suns. So the Suns get Farid and pick 14 from Denver in exchange for Alan Williams. I believe the Suns can afford to make this trade with more salary coming in than what's going out, and it'll save Denver some money too. I'm going to go ahead and say that Alan Williams is likely waived by Denver.
Very likely, yeah.
Before July 6th, which I think is his waive date or guarantee date, I should say, which is a very interesting date as an aside. I think that's there for a reason and the Suns' plans. So, we'll see what happens there. But then as an extension of that, I think the Suns would do something like that to package 14 and 16 together to jump up.
I was just going to say, right, because there's no way they want to make that pick, but it makes sense that was something like a precursor.
Yeah, they're not bringing in 2 extra guys. I think they're purely looking at, and this is a deal I think they would have set up prior to the draft with Denver based on, what's happening and what's happened in that top probably 10. I'm not sure if 14 and 16 gets you, right up there, but one place that I do think he could get you to is 11 with Charlotte, which is about where I think you'd need to get to. So what I'm getting at there is the Clippers have 12 and 13, so and potentially be looking at a point guard at one of those positions. So I can't remember where I saw it, but someone very smartly noted that if you're looking to jump up for a guy like SGA, you probably need to get in front of the Clippers, because either the Clippers are going to pick him with one of their 2 picks, or there's going to be a whole host of teams calling the Clippers for one of those picks. So you need to jump before those picks, and I think that's the spot. So essentially with this trade, you're taking on Farid, you're losing Alan Williams, and you're packaging your 2 picks together to draft someone like SGA, and I'd be all for a deal like that. What do you think?
Yeah, I would do it. I don't think it's really that big of a deal to take on Farid for the Suns.
He'd play, right?
He might play. Yeah. I mean, he plays the same position as Bender and Chris, obviously, but I don't know. I would do it. If they really find someone they love and they don't think he'll be there at 16, I think it's a worthwhile move to make.
Yep.
I don't know if I love Shea as much as everybody else does, so I don't know if I personally would do it for him.
Okay. We're gonna fight a little later on that, maybe.
Are we? I don't dislike Shea. I just think that there's a lot of questions with him that you're assuming he's gonna fill.
Okay, let's get to that in a bit.
Okay, let's get to that in a bit. All right, I'll move on to the next one then. Okay, so this is a pretty ridiculous one, and I don't think it's going to happen. In fact, I know it's not going to happen, but it's fun to talk about, so I'm going to bring it up. So one thing I kept thinking about when everyone was talking about Karl Anthony Towns to the Suns was if Minnesota actually did have to trade Karl Anthony Towns for, say, because, I don't know, he insulted the owner's wife or something. Like, there's some reason why they actually had to trade him.
That's one way to get traded.
They're not going to trade him just because he insults Tibbs' wife, right? It's going to have to be the owner's wife.
Yes.
But what I kept thinking was, I don't think Minnesota does that just for number 1, and I don't think the Suns would give up number 1 and Josh Jackson.
Okay.
But I also think if Minnesota trades Karl Anthony Towns, Jimmy Butler, he's not long for there, right? He's a free agent in 2019. So they're going to have to sort of either deal him or just let him walk, right?
Yep.
So why not send Towns and Butler to Phoenix for number 1, Josh Jackson, 16, Milwaukee pick, Marquise Chris, Allen Williams, Tyson Chandler. What do you think?
You weren't lying about it being pretty crazy.
It's crazy.
What I will say is, there's a lot of those deals floating around in Twitter land, and where, the Suns go all in, for lack of a better term, and give up most of their assets that they're holding on to. That's the kind of package that you probably have to do it for, to be honest.
Because you're good. You are good next year if your team has Booker.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I was getting at, is I'd want to be very, very good next year if we're giving up all of our kind of future flexibility when it comes to making further moves. So I haven't really liked any of the deals that I've seen out there that are kind of resulting in us giving up, our own picks, the Milwaukee pick, even the Miami pick I've seen in some of them, because, it's generally only getting us one big player whilst, often losing someone like a Jackson. So you don't get all that much better, and you lose all that kind of, treasure chest to play with moving forward to tinker your team. So, what I would say is it's pretty crazy. But, if you're going to give up all of those assets, I think you need to get, 2 players or, a top 5 player in the NBA back.
So would you say that you would do it? It's crazy, but you would do it if it were a thing.
In a pinch, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a big fan of Jimmy Buckets. And, I think we're all hoping Towns and Booker can reunite one day, hopefully in purple and orange. So, yeah,
it's kind of inevitable, I'm not going to lie. I kind of think it's going to happen someday.
I think it's going to happen someday. I'm not convinced it's in purple and orange. So that would be my only hesitation there.
Well,
but
that was depressing.
Yeah, you've always got to bring it back to a depressing moment as a Suns fan. Come on.
That is true. That is our MO.
But yeah, I would do it if the phone called and I had a couple of minutes to decide. I would definitely do it.
Cool. Okay, why don't you bring us back down to earth with something a little more realistic?
All right, we're going very realistic here. At least I think so. Going to pick 16 again, and as you're probably noticing, I don't really have a lot of hope that the Suns are going to draft at pick 16. So what I'm doing here is I'm going back to the Clippers and their package with 12 and 13 and kind of reading the tea leaves here a little bit. So I'm thinking the Clippers might use 12 and 13 as recent reports have suggested to jump up in the draft. I'm not sure it gets them high enough to get someone like Luka Doncic, as that has been reported. But I don't see that. We talked about in our first couple of pods that it's kind of like an 8-person draft, an 8-guy draft. Guys like Trae Young and Michael Porter Jr. will be sitting around there at 8. So I could see them grabbing one of those 2 guys with a package of 12 and 13. But as we noted with Cleveland, one guy isn't going to change your franchise, particularly around 8. So I think they might look to grab another pick, even though it's an 8 top kind of tier draft. There are some really good guys around the late lottery. So I've got Patrick Beverley to Phoenix for pick 16.
Okay.
I think the Clippers, trade up for someone like Young, or look to get Sexton or SGA at 16. And they've also obviously got Teodosic on a team option, I believe, so they could roll with him next year as the starting point guard, and probably be pretty happy to lose Beverley for 16 because he's only got 1 year left at $5 million, which is a bit of a question mark for the Suns. So this deal would really be if the Suns are trying to do their best to compete next year and put a team around Booker. So yeah, I would say probably more unlikely the Suns don't do it than any team, but I would happily pull the trigger on that trade. What do you think?
I would too. Beverly is almost ideal when you're talking about someone you want to put next to Devin Booker, because he can guard any of the better perimeter players that Booker can't guard.
Yep.
He can hit wide open threes.
Yep.
He's also he'll bring an element of just toughness and scrappiness the Suns just don't have.
Agreed.
Outside of Jackson has it a little bit, but he's a rookie last year. I mean, you can't expect a rookie to bring that for your whole team.
Yeah.
Beverly would really change the culture.
He would, and I think that might be a nice segue into our next topic of conversation.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go on. But before we go on, I want to say I like that one. That was a good one.
Okay, cool.
All right, so our next thing is going to be draft prospects at pick 31 and a little bit of 16, just because, like I said earlier, there's a little bit of overlap.
Yep.
I'm going to turn this to David. He's going to run this because David has put together his little mini big board Booker partners at pick 16/31.
Yeah, so I think talking about Patrick Beverley is, as I said, a very good segue into this because, if we look at Booker as, a James Harden type, I'm not saying he's James Harden. No one jumped down my throat with that kind of call, but I think that's definitely where the Suns are going with Booker.
Chris Hansen would say that he's much better than James Harden.
Well, as I said, I said he's not James Harden. I didn't say whether he was better or
That's
worse.
True.
So I'm kind of trying to please both sides there. But I think Patrick Beverley is the kind of guy that you would love to pair with Booker, like they paired him with James Harden. But eventually, the Rockets got off that because they realized that they needed, maybe someone a little more dynamic and really hit the jackpot with Chris Paul there. But
yeah, I was about to say, well, yeah, they realized they had a chance to get Chris Paul. That's why they decided to move on.
Exactly. But it did work for a long time, and it worked for them, heading into the playoffs and being a very good regular season team. So, I mean, looking at Beverley, I think you're kind of looking at a really unique player to put next to Booker. You want someone, to quote Mo Bamba here, someone who does more with less, someone who can play off the ball but do a little bit of secondary playmaking. You definitely want them to be able to shoot from deep, and you want them to be a really good defender that can probably guard the 1, the 2, and maybe even the 3 if possible. So I think there's about half a dozen guys in this draft that kind of fit that profile.
Okay.
The problem is none of them bring every single one of those things. And, the fact is if they did, they'd probably be a lot higher in the draft. So
right.
You're looking at, trying to bank on 1 or 2 of them improving the worst aspect of those 3 in their game. But yeah, I've kind of created a little bit of a mini board here, and I haven't really shared this with you before, so I'll be interested to get your takes on it. So my board, as far as this kind of player goes, I've got SGA at 1. I've got Kyrie Thomas at 2, who I picked in the last episode for the Suns at 16, and granted,
you love him.
Yeah, I'm happy to admit I've got him probably a little bit higher than most. I've got Milton at 3.
Okay.
Melton at 4. I've got Shamet at 5, Brunson at 6, and Carter at 7. What's your kind of initial thoughts on that group of guys?
Why isn't Melton higher? Is it because you don't trust his shooting?
Yes.
I mean, that's fair just to say, but would you say, so let me ask you this, because in my view, if you just take shooting out of it, he's clearly the guy who's the best fit next to Booker.
I would agree, but the shooting really
I know. It does
hurts
really
his
matter.
case. And as I said, like all of these guys, right up to SGA, they've all got, probably one of the 3 things that they need to work a lot on. For Melton, it's definitely his outside shot, and you really need a guy next to Booker that can hit, at least an open catch and shoot 3, which, there's not a lot of evidence right now that Melton can. Not to say that he won't, but right now he can't. The reason that obviously I love Kyrie Thomas, for instance, more than a lot of other people is when I look at those 3 boxes, and maybe I've got blinkers on a little bit with this thinking, but he can play off ball. He played off ball a lot at Creighton. He can certainly shoot the 3. He shot kind of 41% on 5.8 attempts per 40 last season. He's a scorer. He's probably best suited as a secondary scorer. He can pass a little. And, maybe outside of Melton, of those 7 guys, he's the best defensive prospect.
Right.
Yeah.
I would say so. I agree with you in terms of versatility, multiple positions. I think the best one position defender is probably Carter, right?
Yes, definitely. But he's very much limited to one position, which
I think he's 6 feet without shoes.
Yeah, but he's a bulldog. I love Carter.
Oh, yeah.
He's a guy that I would, very much love the Suns to take at 59 if he happens to be there at 59, but I don't think he will be.
That would be amazing.
But I also even though it would be a little too early at 31, depending on what we do at 1 and 16, I certainly wouldn't be upset if the Suns took him at 31.
I don't think there's such a thing as too early at 31, to be honest with you. Like, if you're at 31, just pick the guy you think's the best guy.
Exactly, and I think that's what the Suns are going to do.
So do I. Okay, here's a question I have for you. So you love Kyrie Thomas. You're the biggest Kyrie Thomas stan in the history of Kyrie Thomas stands. Why do you have SGA above him?
I have SGA above him purely because of upside.
Okay.
Thomas is old in this class, quite old. I think I'm not sure where he ranks among kind of everyone in the top 30, but he's an older prospect. Whereas SGA
he's 21, right? He's 21.
Yeah, very much a younger prospect. Mm-hmm. I just love SGA's kind of physical tools. He reminds me a lot actually of Dante Exum. Which some people might hate that comparison, but I've watched a lot of Exum being an Australian. I think they've kind of got a very similar athletic profile. They both had question marks on their shot. Exum probably still does, but very good finishes around the rim, and really kind of have plus defensive upside. I watch a lot of SGA and I see a bit of Exum in him, and Exum's a guy that I've kind of said in the past I wouldn't be too displeased if the Suns, take a punt on him in restricted free agency. So
can I tell you one thing that makes me a little nervous about Shea?
Sure.
I see the upside, obviously, the defensive upside because of his length, his frame, all that stuff, but I can't believe how much that dude gets blown by. Like, it's all the time.
He does, and I've kind of got in my notes here. He was a lazy defender last year. Yeah. I think you're banking a lot on his tools, and there is tape that you see when he's engaged with his kind of big wingspan. He is a good defender when he wants to be. He's obviously very light and can get blown by or pushed around a little. You'd definitely be hoping he can add some muscle to his frame, but. Yeah, there's two different SGAs out there when you watch his college tape, and there's a guy that's not even in his stance, standing upright, just getting blown by just way too easily, and then you see this other guy who's down in proper defensive stance and is very hard to get around because of how long he is.
I do think the fact that he's just not in his stance half the time is actually a little bit encouraging, because an NBA coach might be able to just get him to just be in his stance, right?
Yeah, and I've been very complimentary of Igor and the way he coaches young guys, but he is not going to stand for that. No pun intended. So yeah, I think with good coaching and a guy that's quite hard on him, and he'll be coming off the bench in Phoenix if they did choose him there. So
right.
Yeah, he's going to have to earn his minutes, and probably one way that he will earn his minutes is playing great defense against second units. So I love his fit with either Ayton or Doncic at the top of the draft, actually, because he will be coming off the bench originally, and if the Suns do go Ayton, which looks like they will, looking longer term, he'd be great fit in that kind of young core. But yeah, just his vision and his upside as a bit of a floor general, I really love.
I'm with you also on, I think he'd be nice with Doncic as well, because he's so big and long that he can defend a lot of positions.
Yeah.
And if you put a core together that has Booker, Doncic, and Jackson in it, you're going to want to have a lot of guys around them who can guard a lot of different people.
Yeah, and I guess just coming back to your original question, we're talking about a bit of a unicorn here and being able to tick all those boxes, and that's why SGA's at the top for me, because he is he probably has the best chance of ticking all those boxes, say 5 years into his career. The shot is the one that's he needs to work on. But I think there's something
it's
to work
awful,
on there.
Though.
No, it's not. I mean, it's quite good percentage-wise. It's obviously very low attempts, which is the query. But there's definitely something on to work there for sure.
So, all right, here's my next question. Why do you hate Landry Shamet?
I don't hate Landry Shamet.
All right, then why are you slandering him by having him like 6th or whatever you had him on your board?
To be clear, I'll kind of, go full disclosure here. I've got him at 29 on my big board, and I've obviously got him 5th on this mini board. I think this mini board probably does him a little bit of a disservice purely because, he's that low because he probably only ticks maybe 1.5 of the boxes at the moment. I think you're probably obviously higher on his.
We're gonna fight.
Defense.
Yeah, we're gonna fight. We're going.
But I mean, I'll raise a few question marks for you to kind of come back at me with. So I don't like the foot issues, and that is kind of a big question mark for me choosing him, say, at 16 in this draft.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a willing defender, but I think he kind of gets, his potential gets capped out there a little bit. So the fit with Booker's, for mine anyway, is a little bit questionable. I love his shooting, obviously, and I think his college career was very much an emotion type offense, which I love for Igor and what he's probably going to implement. So I definitely see a lot of positives there. It's just it's maybe the injury history and his fit with Booker, particularly from a defensive standpoint, that I don't love.
Yeah, and so that's the one thing I do get that, because he wasn't a particularly good defender in college, mainly because he just isn't very strong or wasn't very strong.
Mm-hmm.
But he has the size. He measured 6'4" without shoes, 6'5" and a quarter in shoes. Had a 6'7" wingspan. A little disappointing. We were kind of hoping he would have higher than that.
Yep.
But that's still good size. The issue is that he's like paper thin, right?
Yeah.
And I actually heard he worked out with the Suns. What was it? I think it was about a week and a half ago or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And what I heard was, I think it was one of the assistant GMs. I can't remember which one. Was talking about how impressed he was by how much Shamet had already bulked up, which gives me a lot of hope that he could become, a better defender.
Yeah.
But here's, I think, what people are sleeping on Shamet. And full disclosure, I am Shamet stan, right? I'm obsessed with him.
And that's fine. We all have our favorites.
We all have our favorites. I think he's like 10 or 11 for me on a big board. So I am all in on Landry Shamet. He shot 44% from 3, 80% from free throw, 65.5% true shooting. He had a 28.8% assist percentage. The guy is just incredibly efficient. I believe he's in the 90th, one of those 90th percentiles in terms of pick and roll efficiency.
He's
points per pick and roll possession.
Yeah, he's very good in the pick and roll.
He's very good at it. I think one of the reasons why he went under the radar a bit is because of what you mentioned. He was in the motion offense. And, he didn't have a very high usage. He only had like a 20 usage.
Yeah, his stats don't really jump off the page from that perspective, which, I agree. I think kind of does him a bit of a disservice with what he is as a player.
Exactly, right. I think if he would have been, I'm not going to say he's like Trae Young usage, but if he would have had something in the middle somewhere, I think he would have had a lot more eye-popping stats.
Yeah.
I just think there's a lot of latent offensive upside with Shamet that people are overlooking. Because, like you said, that dude can shoot the hell out of the ball.
He sure can, yeah. I mean, him and Booker together, that's a hell of a Splash Brothers type combo. The only thing I will say, and probably the last thing that I'll say on Landry is, I think he's struggled a little bit to penetrate on his own. Mm-hmm. His pick and roll is great, don't get me wrong, but it generally ends up him finding in his own shot, or making a great pass to the rolling big or popping big. There's not a lot of it, if you watch him, that kind of results in him attacking the basket.
Right.
And that might be to do with his size, and maybe that changes in the NBA if he can put on a little bit of extra.
I think it's a lot of his first step is not great, right?
Yeah.
Maybe he'll get better explosion as he gets in an NBA training program. We'll see. I think he can be successful without that.
Yep.
But if that comes, if he can improve the athleticism, improve in the strength, I think there's I'm going to say there's star upside with him.
Yeah, I mean, you've got him very high, so I'm not going to argue with that being his ceiling, but there's just probably a few question marks which I struggle to put him, kind of up there. But you make a good case for him being at least a lot higher than what I've got him on my board at the moment.
Yeah, well, you're much closer to the general consensus than I am.
This is true.
But I think we could both agree it would not be a bad pick at number 31, right?
Yes, yeah, I'd be ecstatic with him at 31 if he was there. Again,
Which
depending.
is possible.
Yeah, I think it's possible. Those question marks that I raise, if teams are really worried about the foot issues and a few other things, I know he had an amazing workout for the Suns, so
He did, yeah.
That.
He had a bad combine, though.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe the Suns, really hope that he's there at 31 and hope that everyone else is kind of off the scent, so to speak.
Yeah, well, it would make me happy. All right, so is there anything else you want to talk about with these guys? You want to move on to the 59 guys?
I'll touch on a couple of things real quick, obviously, just
Okay.
to round out the big board. Say the reason I love Milton more than Melton is the shot. I think they both got positives against the other, but I'm quite high on Milton.
He's really good shooter, yeah.
He's a great shooter. And again, like if you're looking at all the, defense is probably the first thing that you're looking at next to Booker. But yeah, the shot's probably next. And then, the secondary playmaking and stuff, as long as they can handle a little and have a bit of experience in the pick and roll, which Milton certainly does, it's probably third on the list of things. But, I'll kind of, just to finish on Milton, I'll go to the Ringer and their draft, prospectus, and kind of the way they sum up Milton is as a multi-positional defender best suited as a complementary scorer in a democratic offense. If that doesn't sum up,
a democratic offense, huh?
If that doesn't sum up partnering with Booker in Igor's offense, I don't know what does, because
that's pretty perfect.
That's kind of what they're going to be doing next year. So, he ticks a lot of boxes there. We touched on Carter briefly, but I really like him kind of around that 31 mark if he's there. Mm-hmm. His defense is phenomenal. He gave,
it's so good.
He gave Trae Young and Nigel Goss kind of both fits last college season. So, one thing I think the Stepien noted was he played 32 minutes a night for West Virginia. Which is probably more like 38 on a regular team, because they press a lot and play really fast. And, no other guards broken 25 minutes a night for that West Virginia team in the last 2 seasons. So,
wow.
He's just all effort, and all defense. And
he's a monster.
I really love him. And
he also, one thing I love about him too is I was looking at his stats earlier today, and he has really improved himself as a shooter in his time there.
Yep.
You can tell he worked on it really hard. He was 39% from 3 last year, 86% from the line.
Yep.
I think he jumped from like 78 to 86% from the line, which I love seeing that from a guy like him. That's exactly what you need.
Yeah, I love him. I've only got Brunson ahead of him just because of Brunson's kind of, better pure point guard skills.
I've seen a lot of people say that Brunson's going to be like this, breakout star. I don't know if I see that, but I do like him a lot.
I don't know about breakout star, but I love Brunson. I love guys with that kind of championship pedigree too.
What do you think his post-up thing is going to work in the NBA?
It's interesting. I've got it in my notes here, but I don't think it's something that teams are going to go towards a lot. I love that he loves to do it, and I think it really changes the floor sometimes when a point guard like that is willing to go down there and just kind of throw the defense off a little bit.
Well, you know what it reminds me of a little bit is Brunson's not the same as this guy at all, much smaller, but that's kind of what Sean Livingston does for the Warriors is backup units. He will do a little bit of that post-up stuff.
Very much so, yeah. And he loves to draw fouls too. Loves a 4-point play. Just throw out there for my Twitter handle. But yeah, another guy that I really like at 31 if they decide to go in a different direction at 16. As we touched on before, there's every chance that the Suns trade 16. We're probably not going to touch on some other guys, but at that pick, but I could see them maybe going for someone like Kevin Huerter or something at 16, just a pure shooter, and then the pressure's really on to maybe get this kind of combo guy at 31, and if Brunson's there, I would definitely take him. And I just love a kind of beautiful lefty stroke, no hesitation.
Yeah,
he's so fun to watch. He just kind of.
There's just so many guys in this draft like that who I just love them. You know what I mean? Everyone we're talking about right now, I'd be so pumped if any of them are in the Suns.
It's
which
such
is why
a nice
it's going to be so sad when they take Aaron Holiday.
Yeah, which is probably a nice segue actually. I mean, as far as other first rounders go, and then some options at 59, what I'm kind of doing here is really looking for clues in what the Suns have done, kind of at the combine and in their workouts so far, and
Okay.
By the time this goes out, that there might be another workout, but it sounds like there's going to be a bit of a break after all the number one guys have come through, and there's some names that you can kind of look to clues in. I don't think Ryan McDonough really drafts guys without working them out in their own facility. I think kind of history suggests that. And the guy that you just mentioned, Aaron Holiday, is the only guy who has come in twice so far for the Suns. That might change.
We'll probably bring him in at the end of next week too.
Yeah, and he was also interviewed at the Combine, which is notable because I think of the 20 guys the Suns interviewed, a lot of them were in that top 10. And then there's some interesting names and some guys that haven't come in yet as well, which we might look to with the end of workouts. Guys like Wagner haven't come in for the Suns yet. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of others too. I think Mitchell Robinson's another one. Zaire Smith, Colin Sexton, SGA. They're all guys that were interviewed by the Suns but haven't kind of come in to work out.
I've got to think that those guys are going to come in at some point, right? Those point guards?
If they don't, I would say it really lends weight to the Suns not using 16 to at least draft at that position. Obviously, there's been rumors of them trading up from 16. There's been rumors of them putting in a package for an existing player. So if we don't see those types of guys come in, I think we can, be more confident that the Suns aren't actually going to pick at 16.
One thing McDonough said today, which I thought was interesting, was that they're going to have a better idea of who they're looking at 16 when they decide on the number one pick, which he said they expect to do sometime this week.
Yes.
So we might be starting to get some clues about a lot of things at the end of next week.
Yeah, and I mean, it's no secret. I love to kind of look for those clues. So when we're talking, the rest of the guys at 31 plus 59, I think Holiday's definitely one to watch. I agree with you. I would hate the pick at 16, and I would be okay with the pick at 31. I just don't really like Holiday all that much, to be honest.
Here's my problem with him. His stats are great.
Yep.
But I watched a lot of UCLA, mostly last year because I loved Lonzo Ball so much.
Yep.
And that guy never jumped off the page. I never was impressed by him at any point. Really.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He was fine.
Yeah, I think he's kind of that spark plug 6-man type guy, but real lack of size and
right.
One thing that jumps off the page for me, I agree, he never was really on my radar throughout the college season, and then when you go back and watch tape, he hit so many ill-advised bad shots in the paint. It was just crazy. And, one thing you could say, well, he's going to be the next Isaiah Thomas because that's all Isaiah Thomas did in his kind of, MVP type run. It was just hit tough shots. But,
right.
If you look at these things bounce around and roll in or, go off the backboard when I highly doubt he called glass. There was a lot of luck there, I thought. And
so that's such an interesting thing, right? Because I've been thinking about this exact idea a lot in the context of Josh Jackson. Yep. Because I watched him so much last year, and at first I was like, God, he's making all these ridiculous, stupid, tough, over people lay-in shots off the backboard. This can't continue. And then it just kept happening. I'm starting to wonder, is this just a skill that he has?
Yeah, and I think and people that love Holiday would probably bring that up as a skill. It's a big worry for me, particularly that it was in college. So does it get even worse in the NBA? Does he become? Right. I've got in my notes, alarm bells, Brandon Knight. Does he become that type of player where it goes from, ill-advised but clutch shots to just bad shots? And
right.
That's the kind of player he looks like to me. So you add that with the fact that he's really only going to guard one position, and he has length, but he's still probably too undersized to slide up anywhere. So yeah, I really don't like Holiday. I'd be fine with it at 31 if they're just looking for, more shooting and a bit of a spark. But if the Suns take him at 16 on draft day, our reaction pod will not be fun.
Yeah. It might be fun to listen to. I'd be stressed.
That's
true. It won't be fun for us.
That's true.
Okay. All right. We're hitting up 55 minutes here. Should we go to the 7 seconds or less?
Yeah, I mean, let's just quickly touch on a couple of 59 guys.
Okay.
again, looking for clues. A guy like Metu, depending on what the Suns do early on, he was interviewed at the Combine and did come in for a workout. He's kind of one of the only bigs that have come in so far. So I don't mind Metu if he can kind of keep his head on straight. He's a good prospect. Diallo's another one. I'd really only be comfortable with him at 59 if he somehow gets there. But he's one that interviewed at the Combine, came in for a workout, and I believe Pat Connolly was also at his pro day. So there's quite a few guys at that pro day, so you never know who the Suns are there to watch. But
I think Robert Williams was there, right?
Yes, yeah, that was kind of he was the main attraction. So yeah, you never know with that. And then I'll throw out some names that really have just come in for workouts and therefore put me on their radar. So Tony Carr's one, Devin Hall's another, I believe had a pretty good workout for the Suns. Sphere, as I'm going to say his name because there's no way I'm going to try and pronounce the rest of it. He's
I would say Shvi.
Anyone who wants to look him up, he's a 6'8" guy from Kansas. If you want to find him, because I'm not going to try and pronounce his name. I love this kid. He shoots lights out. Actually, quite a good first step off the dribble to attack closeouts when he's really feeling it. So, and I just love his size as well. So if he's there at 59, I'd definitely go there. And one last name I'll throw out is William McDowell White. I've got to rep the Australians on this pod. He won't be on many people's radars, but if there are any Australians listening, he's the son of former footballer Darryl White, who was a high leaping footballer in Aussie rules. But yeah, McDowell White's kind of impressive. He wasn't.
What's your favorite Aussie rules football team?
I'm a Hawks fan.
Okay. You're not a Gold Coast Suns fan?
I am not a Gold Coast Suns fan. They have recently entered the league and may be out sooner than the Vancouver Grizzlies if they keep going this way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're bad. How do you know the Gold Coast Suns?
I don't remember. Well, a couple years ago, I became aware there was another Suns out there, and I was excited about it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Anyone listening looking to pick an Aussie rules team, I wouldn't recommend the Gold Coast Suns.
You got to get on the ground floor.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, you might be getting on a disappearing team pretty soon. But yeah, McDowell White's interesting. He's 6'5", played in Europe. Really, really fun guy to watch. There's not a lot of film on YouTube, if I'm honest, but if you go and have a look, he's pretty eye-catching. He makes some flashy passes, and he's a really nice pick and roll type point guard. So yeah, go check him out. That's kind of, he'll probably go undrafted, to be honest, but if he's coming in for a workout, he's obviously on the Suns' radar for one reason.
Yeah, maybe he'll be on the summer league team.
I would love that. I would watch that team for sure. I'm going to watch anyway, let's be honest.
That's going to be a fun team, regardless of who they take.
Definitely.
They're going to play Jackson at least one game. They're going to have Bender probably, I imagine, and Chris out there.
Yep.
So that should be fun.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, there's some names for everyone listening. Go and have a look and let us know what you think and who you're high on. But yeah, we should probably move on, hey?
Yeah, we should. One thing I'll say, if there's anybody out there that you'd like us to look at and discuss, let us know on Twitter. And we will do that.
That's a great point.
Some time for the draft.
Yeah, we've got a few more pods coming up before the draft. So, yeah, we would definitely love to touch on a few things from listeners.
Cool. Let's move on to 7 seconds or less. I'm on the clock. Let's do it.
All right, I'll be quick. So I'm keeping with the War Room theme here from our retro Did You Know?
Okay.
I'm going to take you inside the Phoenix front office of past and present. So now that we've covered the whole length of this draft from a Suns perspective, it's time to talk picks. So in the past, pre-McDonough's reign, there was Earl Clark, as we mentioned before, at 16. There was Keefe at 13, Kendall Marshall at 13. And then when McD has come along, there's Len at 5, TJ at 14, Tyler Ennis at 18, Bogdan at 27, who never became a Sun, unfortunately, Alec Brown, shouts to Reese on Twitter. Bender at 4, Chris at 8, Ulis at 34, Jackson at 4, and Reed at 32, who I hope stays on the Suns roster, but things aren't looking good.
You just omitted Alec Peters, I hope you know. The next Larry Bird.
I did, yes. So that's, you kind of need a little bit of that background info there to jump into the question. So I'll get straight in. So number one, out of that group, which guy were you the most convinced was a great pick at the time but didn't work out?
Oh, wow. Crap. Can we say Bender?
I think that's fine. I mean, I put him in there.
I think Bender's. I still on Bender Island, but yeah, that's probably the name. I was really pumped about him.
Okay.
Very pumped.
So number two, you probably see where this is going, but which guy were you the least convinced about was great, and maybe you were proved right, maybe you were proved a little wrong. What do you think?
I was 100% sure that the Kendall Marshall pick was idiotic at the time.
Okay.
I feel like I've been proven very right by history.
All right. Well, that's at least not on McD's shoulders. That's on
True.
on the past
True.
front office. But yeah, I can't say I was too pumped about that one either.
I don't know. I don't want to get into Kendall Marshall. It makes you sad.
He's a nice guy too, which is why I really
exactly.
hate
I know. That's why I hate
jumping on him. All right. So number three in this draft, who do you feel the strongest about? Who's in play for the Suns is a great pick, and who do you think would be a bad pick for the Suns?
Are you talking at one, or are you talking about later?
Any guy that's in play for the Suns. Just give me who you feel real strong about, either or one good and one bad.
Okay.
I'll give you 14 seconds for this.
Thank you, because it's two answers. I feel really, really good about Jaren Jackson Jr. I think that guy is going to be a good NBA player almost no matter what because of his defensive floor. We'll probably be talking about that a little more next episode.
Yep.
Somebody who I feel really bad about. I mean, we talked about Aaron Holiday a lot already. That at 16 would be a problem. Man, you're really testing me. Oh, you know what? I watched a lot of Raleigh Alkins today. He just reminds me of too much of Eric Bledsoe in all the negative ways. I just don't think he's going to be any good. So that'd be my answer.
Okay.
Cool. So did I succeed? Was I under 7 seconds for all those answers? I don't time myself.
To be honest, I didn't time you, but you're
We're a little loose on that. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. Please, if you like the show, please rate, review, subscribe. It really helps us out. You can follow me on Twitter at MaxMCC11. You can follow David on Twitter at The4PointPlay. Next week, not even next week, on Friday, we're going to be releasing our 8 and deep dive. So stay tuned for that. That should be fun. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Max.